Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Good
is it
morning.
Friday yet?
It is.
It's Friday.
It
Nice.
is.
Good.
I know. It's like Monday when we got on the show. I was like, it feels like Friday.
Yeah.
But, that's it. That happens too. Those of you out there listening, when you don't have any kids at home, so you don't have to go based on school schedules and you just kind of like flow. And, we work 7 days a week. So
Yeah.
it doesn't.
We like to celebrate the Friday with everybody else, but in reality, it's not too different than the rest of the days.
Well,
right?
and usually it's like, hey, it's Friday. What do you want to go do? It's like, and then I think it's Friday on Monday.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's part of it.
Crazy.
Couple of announcements. BHPH United starts Sunday. Not too late to hop on a plane and get to Vegas. So get involved in that.
I was looking and seeing that some of the principals that are our friends are already there and kind of getting all settled in and ready to rock and roll. So that's going to be a really good thing. If you guys are going to be there, enjoy, because we attended last year and it was really outstanding. Yep. And
so far we got Florida and Texas in the house.
Yes.
Welcome. Good morning. And by the way,
Tyler,
for you Texas
George,
folks, you're going to want to make sure and put next Friday on your calendar. We got Jeff Martin, the new CEO.
Yeah, looking forward
former executive director with Texas, is now the national CEO for the Independent Auto Dealers Association. So he'll be joining us next Friday. So.
Yeah, that'll be good. It'll be a good one. I think we said last time, we both are huge fans of Jeff. Yeah. He's just an outstanding guy and
widely loved
and respected. Absolutely. And then right after the Buy Here, Pay Here United again is the NEO Summit, the user summit. And that is a free event for anyone that is a current customer of NEO. If you're thinking about doing NEO, I would stop and talk to Naveen or Scott and see if you can just step in and watch some. If you guys are sticking around an extra day, because it's the day following. We were thinking that we're going to be there and we're not. Some family stuff has come up and so we're not going to be able to come, but oh my goodness, our thoughts are going to be with you. That's right. I was like, Scott, I'm going to need the recordings.
Yeah.
Because
we have a lot of clients.
We really do. And I'm always trying to learn.
Yeah. Because more Texas. We've got more Texas.
I know.
There's
We've
Arizona.
got a lot
Good morning.
of Texas and Arizona and stuff
morning,
like that.
George and Scottsdale.
Yeah. So today's topic
is a big one.
It's a big one. And it's one that it's just I am not someone that has 2 decades of experience in the world of buy here, pay here. And this has been one of the more difficult things for me to wrap my head around.
Well, and you probably don't need to for what you're doing, but I think it's an important subject. We're going to talk today about collateral recovery rate, one of the big numbers that you hear referred to a lot in the industry. And I've just find, as somebody who has been around it a long time and works with numbers a lot, that I can't seem to nail down the formula. So, I've got all these spreadsheets. And so we brought some actual slides from some spreadsheets that we work with. And I created a couple of graphs to be able to illustrate. So for today, it's kind of just being transparent, getting the experts in here. We've got Jimmy Rambo from Spartan Financial in the wings. So he's going to kind of walk us through the math.
Hello, Jimmy.
Come on in here, Jimmy.
Good morning.
Good morning. I owe you an apology right from the right.
What was that?
Because when I posted all of this stuff, I put the title from the one we did Wednesday. And so so I wake up at 2:00 in the morning this morning and Jim's on his phone because the glow just wakes me up. I don't know. And I see him texting me so I can see it in the morning. It says, honey, you put the wrong title. I was like, darn it.
Titles don't matter. We're
right. It was actually the title of the show because we're supposed to be talking about underwriting and compliance. But so I fixed it this morning, and I think that everyone knows that what Jimmy talks about, and it was actually in the description of things. So I'm sorry on that. So we're so happy to have you
right.
here.
Your name is right.
Yes.
But we're not talking about underwriting this morning. We're talking about collateral.
And I at first pulled your picture from LinkedIn. You need to update that.
Right.
The
Yeah, that was a while
website
back.
is so much better. So it's a couple years old. So, but I really like the one you've got on the website.
Both
So,
very handsome, of course.
so Jimmy Rambo from Spartan Financial is the senior.
He's just give us your title,
Okay,
Jimmy.
the senior.
I guess.
It changes day to day, but it's I guess it's technically senior manager of asset-based lending or commercial lending or business development manager. I mean, whatever.
No disrespect meant it. It's like, I know usually when we've got a question, you're like our first go-to. So, at Spartan, because you know all of the stuff that's happening there. So,
thanks for making time to talk, Jimmy. We
glad to do it.
Yeah, we know that you work with this number a lot. You work with dealers who are, shopping financing, of course. And so they're going to, this will be a number that comes into play. So we will talk through the whole thing of why this number matters and how dealers who, even if you aren't shopping financing or looking to sell paper, it'd be an important number to know in your business. So I've actually got a couple of dealers who are also
we should bring them in. Yay.
Hey,
Wallman.
from Central Ohio. They got the Wallmans. That's Justin and Mike Wallman, their brothers in an operation that we're familiar with. And so we know from past conversations especially with Justin and myself, like running down these numbers, especially in certain software, which we're not going to name any softwares here today, but we just know that it's easier in some than others. And I know that from conversation with Justin is like, Justin, you're somebody who's just, like a lot of dealers out there, like, which numbers should I really be looking at? Right. So how do I know which numbers really are indicative of my portfolio performance? Like if I'm looking at the dashboard in my car, it's easier for me to see my speed, or whatever, but I need to see like, which one is the oil pressure gauge? Which one tells me when the oil pressure is running low? So that's kind of the way I think about it, but go ahead, Justin.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us on the show. We appreciate it. My brother, Mike here. Jimmy, pleasure to meet you. And of course, Jim and Michelle, always good to talk to you guys. And I think it's just one of those types of metrics that I probably learned about a couple of years ago that it's good to kind of, get honed in on. It changes, it's volatile sometimes, and, back to what you said, Jim, I think like, knowing a little bit about everything is better than like really trying to, grill down on one specific metric and then really get like into the weeds on, hey, is this a full gauge of how my portfolio is performing? So I like to toggle back and forth onto, multiple portfolio metrics, but I would like to learn a little bit more about it and exactly, how the banking institutions, how they really judge it and, what can be determined by that.
So I think, Jimmy, we got a chance, like with folks like Justin and some of our other dealers, I hope you can simplify their dashboard, because for me, and you got to have enough data for some of this, but like this collateral recovery rate number, this is a good one. If I were picking long range performance, something I could identify that's kind of measures my overall health of my portfolio. And I think when I look at that, there's a reason that comes up in conversations with lenders. The number comes up in conversations with would-be bulk buyers. It's like, why is that number important? Because what it does is measures the portfolio performance historically and tries to use that as some sort of projection.
So why is it important to Spartan?
Well, I think just kind of to start with it, like CRR or collateral recovery rate, lenders and people in the industry tend to like to use fancy terms or acronyms that sound complicated, and just in simple terms, collateral recovery rate is, as that portfolio liquidates, how much that liquidation came from principal collected, and that right there is just a good general performance measure to know how the portfolio is performing.
Yeah, and I think we can show, if you'll show one of those. I got a couple of slides. So for those listening audibly, this morning, you might want to find your way to the video eventually. But let's go to this Jim's conversion. There's
Jim's
the top.
conversion.
Yep.
Okay.
So Justin, these are the kind of numbers that you'll be familiar with based on the work that we did with you. But for those who can see the screen, those numbers in gold there, Jimmy, are what I call conversion rates. It's just the rate at which the portfolio has been converting. And that, I don't know if they can see it well enough, but that what that measures is the last 12 months of metrics. So that first number that you see up there, I think it says 4.2%. That's just a rolling average of the last 12 months, or the average of 12 months, the most recent 12 months, for principal collected for a month as a percentage of the principal balance at the start of the month. So it's just kind of the same thing as some of these other metrics, but it's basically just saying, okay, we might have collected 3.5% of our starting balance in month number 1 and 4.7 in the next month. But across 12 months, we've collected 4.2%. And this is an actual dealer's, spreadsheet, is actual client that we work. So said another way there is if that dealer opens the month with, I think that number says like 12.8 million in principal, then they could expect to collect about 4.2% of principal, or in principal, as a percentage of that opening balance. So what that lets me do is take those numbers and then create projections. You can say, okay, if we continue to collect in the next 12 months in the way that we've collected in the last 12 months, this is kind of what our next year looks like, in terms of cash flow. So I can see why it starts to become important for the folks who are looking to buy this portfolio or who are looking to lend against it, and so these, as you said to me in our conversation leading up to the show, is like, there's lots of different ways to get some numbers that are going to be indicative of this performance. But it's like, yeah, you can go ahead and show formula number 1. So part of the problem though, Jimmy, the reason I invited you to the show in particular is because one of the things I see, and I would invite Justin and Mike to, hop on Google and just do a search for what is the formula for collateral recovery rate. And I found in my case, there was just hardly anything out there, or what was out there was different. They seemed to talk about it differently in other industries. And so it was just challenging to figure out, okay, what is the thing?
So what this says, formula number 1 for collateral recovery rate, or CRR, this is per industry news article. It's collected principal plus repo ACV / FMV,
fair market value,
plus collected principal plus gross charge off principal.
Yeah. So let me get a clarification from Jimmy before we move forward on this. So I think in the information you sent over, Jimmy, what you were calling liquidations would be the liquidation of the fair market value or the ACV of the repos.
Right. So the principal collected is what it is. It's the principal you collected during that time period on those accounts. But then, like where you've got repo ACV, we would define kind of as liquidation proceeds, and that could be, in an ideal world for a calculation, that would be you go sell it at auction. That's what it would be. But yeah, that's not how it works in practice. So what you would do, you would assign typically a wholesale value for that vehicle as you're bringing it back in, like for example, a black book wholesale, right. And you would credit, the proceeds for that value in there.
Sure.
So it would be the principal collected plus the liquidation proceeds.
And again, just stopping right there to think about, so what does that mean? That's basically not including the interest that we've generated. That is basically the cash that we've squeezed out of the portfolio across that period of time, because we collect a certain amount of principal and we recovered a certain amount of repos. And so this is where, obviously in our industry, it gets a little consistent. Some wait until the repo is sold to process the thing, and others will go ahead and assign a book value and put it back in a wholesale or repo inventory.
So is that something that like different lenders will have? This is the way you do it?
So Jimmy can better answer that. Yeah.
Right. So when we're calculating it, we're going to do like when that account either defaulted or repossessed, go ahead and you charge it off, you go ahead and assign the value for it then, because that makes the calculation a little bit simpler. Because what makes there's some inconsistencies here is like, you really wanted to get real technical and make it correct. You may sell that vehicle, 45 days later, then you're going back and making all these adjustments to it, but you just go ahead and assign that wholesale value.
Like it's like, so what I'm hearing you say is that Spartan, let's do it immediately. Let's not wait. Let's do it immediately, because it's like, as a snapshot right this moment, this is what's happening.
Right. There's less adjustments that have to be made to go back and put it in which period that actually happened.
Okay.
Well, the other thing I like about that, Jimmy, is that it basically forces, or it facilitates some sort of consistent policy with processing charge-offs, right? So if I do my charge-offs, every charge-off that's eligible that meets the definition by the close of a calendar month, as an example, it gets charged off, even if the car has not been sold or if it's still sitting in the back, it's wrecked or whatever. I assign a value, I charge the account off. That makes my charge-off policy or practices consistent
and cleaner.
Right. Exactly. It reduces one variable to the calculation and just helps it be consistent. That way, when you go back and comparing, hey, March of this year to March of last year, you're doing everything in a kind of consistent manner versus, is there some fluctuation in the calculation because I did it this way this time, or this way?
I can also see, I know one of Jim's, when we've talked to different DMSs, it's like, I want to be able to close a month and have that month locked up. That month is closed. No one can go back and backdate or change whatever that, so that it's like a real true snapshot at this moment of what it is that's happening with the portfolio. Because when you have the ability to go back and change the thing, and we're gonna shift the number, that it's like whatever you pulled for the month before that's sitting on your desk is no longer valid.
Very true.
Yeah. So it's something we kind of look at. We spent a little time on that a few weeks ago, but and we're still working away, and we're getting some of the DMS providers are coming forward to kind of be responsive in terms of trying to create what it is we're suggesting that dealers need. So that's good. That's a nice step forward. But I think with the CRR thing, there's some benefits. And I think, Jimmy, what you're looking for, if you're looking at the last 12 months of history, if I'm in your shoes as a lender and I'm looking at a dealer's 12 months of history, I would like to have enough consistency that I feel like if I loan money to this dealer, that the next 12 months looks pretty similar to the last 12 months.
Correct. Right? And one thing we do as well too is like, we look at kind of, we track on a monthly basis, but then for most of our, like for triggers or different things, you're doing a 3-month average, because in 1 month, they say some people may have different practices, like at quarter end, you may do charge-offs or some other thing, but over 3 months, that stuff should kind of level out.
Yeah.
Or you had something that month in that could have carried over the next time. If you start doing 3-month averages, it levels it out more.
Yeah, and it does. And I'm actually that. I'll show you a chart if you want to load that up. I'll show you a chart. But I think in order, you can look at the top line of this particular chart. No, the one that there's.
Which one?
There's actually a chart in there.
Okay. I need to have better instructions, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. Which one? Chart all spending or expenses?
No, up there at the second one.
Chart of both. Okay.
So what this graph shows is really the top line is that formula that we've looked at. We've got this other one that we'll talk about in just a minute, but that's a 12-month rolling average, which is why the line looks so flat. Like it's just when you take your 12 months, obviously you're not going to see the spikes. And so I think, Jimmy, when I hear you talk about the 3-month thing, which is perfectly appropriate, I just know that also moves with tax refund season. The seasonality is going to show up more, with those kind of things. So you'll allow for that some. And then if we can go back to that other formula, let's go back to the one that
the one.
Yeah, formula, let's go back to formula number 2. See that up there?
I do. I've got it actually right here. We're going to add this to the stream right there. Okay.
There you go.
Cool.
So this one is really the one that we want to try to verify. And I hope I've got it represented the way that you expressed it to me, Jimmy. So let's just walk through it. Like top line, the numerator up there is collected principal plus liquidation proceeds, which I'm describing as repo, actual cash value, or fair market value. That blue is kind of my own added definition for clarification, maybe, because I find that not everybody lenders and bankers talk in terms of liquidation numbers and other numbers. But so the portfolio liquidation then on the bottom line in my calculation was the beginning principal in the period. So if we're measuring 12 months, we'd go back to the beginning of that period. But just the principal balance in the portfolio at the beginning of the period plus new contracts minus the closing balance.
No, you would you don't include the originations during the month.
Yeah.
During that period,
you eliminate, you ignore those. It's just what, let's say for the month of March, what that portfolio, the accounts that are in that portfolio on March 1st, their balance at March 31st. You ignore all of the March originations.
Ignore the originations. Okay. So
you're looking at what that portfolio at the beginning of the month, in the month, how did it, what the liquidation was that month.
Got it. Okay. So that means that we need to have you back on a future episode so that we can get the screen to represent exactly what dealers need to have. And of course, we'll create it and we'll share it in the comments with this.
Yeah, and then I can even share some of the templates and stuff that we have too.
Oh, yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be good. And I just think, that's an important step, because we can use that as kind of a measuring stick. And then we can ask, others, if their formula differs a little bit. It's part of why, and it's part of why I invited, Justin and Mike to be here, is like, Justin and I worked through a lot of this stuff last year and working with them and their own metrics. It's like, it's challenging to figure out. Of course, in their case, they're not out there shopping for a line of credit or looking to sell any paper. They're just trying to look at the performance of their portfolio. And I think what I was also trying to help Justin create is a roll forward that says kind of what we said earlier, which is, if we continue to perform at this rate, this is what we can expect in terms of yield on the portfolio. And it's typically cash. Right? It's like, what kind of cash yield can we expect on the portfolio in the coming, 12 and 24 months, or whatever we want to kind of extrapolate. So I think it's a really important thing for dealers to understand, even if they're, like I said, if they're not looking to sell paper or shop and financing, it's still a metric. Like if I were to pick two numbers, Jimmy, I'd be looking at a weekly collection efficiency. So that'd be my weekly number. And then on the monthly, I'd be looking at this collateral recovery rate. So we just got to kind of get that formula right.
Yeah, I agree. Because like the CRR, it kind of leads you in kind of three different ways. Like particularly, like if it's lower than what you're expecting, you start asking, how are my collections? How are collections going? Am I having early defaults? Because early defaults are going to be the primary contribution to the lower CRR, and then you get into even the markup of the vehicle, because that markup and early defaults are going to lead to the severity, or because the inverse of collateral recovery rate is what a lender would call loss to liquidation.
Yeah.
So and that's where you're looking at the severity of the losses. So as you have early defaults, or you have defaults with higher markups, they're going to impact that CRR.
Right.
Anything else?
Yeah. We can certainly we could do a whole episode on severity versus frequency, or whatever those numbers are. But it's like, I think for our typical, listener, I would just say, whatever you might recommend. It sounds like a 3-month rolling average is something that, or a 3-month window you'd be measuring.
Right. We like tracking it on month by month basis, but then we like using 3-month averages, because that does smooth out some of that. And if we found if you wait too long with it, 6 or 12 months, then you're being too reactive to it, and you can't make adjustments or start asking questions until it's too late.
Very good.
So that month is a good time frame.
So I'm bringing this back up because so that those that are listening, that this is what Spartan uses. They don't use the month of that same month.
Well, they do measure the most recent month. Yeah. They just bring in a 3-month rolling average of the most recent 3 months.
Right. Well, we look at it on a monthly basis, but then you're doing 3-month averages.
Yeah. So again, for anybody looking at the screen, this formula is incorrect. Like, we've got to make some adjustments, and we'll bring that back. We'll put it in the comments for all the threads out there on where the morning show appears. But it's like, this is why I think, Jimmy, like, I've been at this 20 plus years, and I've been a numbers guy the whole time. And I've been working with dealers, and we do the conversion numbers that you see, because again, I'm not trying to be a banker over here, but I am trying to help the dealer look at a projection on what their performance, their historic performance. If we extrapolate that going forward, then that helps them know, from a budgeting standpoint, how many cars can I buy this coming month, or whatever. Like, what's my cash yield look like? So this is why we kind of drill down. And so this is part of what the fun has been for Michelle and me in the morning show. It's just, let's get all the people together and let's sort this stuff out, because I find dealers out there just all over the place and struggling, and they don't know, because gosh, if I've been doing this 20 years, and I can't seem to pin it down. And the article that I referred to, that first formula, that's from an article. It's 15 years old. But if I search Google for what is the formula for collateral recovery, that's the most relevant thing I came up with. So that's an indication of a problem. So we think going forward, when people search, how do I calculate collateral recovery rate? They're going to find the Buy Here, Pay Here morning show with Jimmy Rambo. And then they're going to have the real
And then they want to watch episode 2,
yeah,
where we actually have the formula corrected. And and working. Yeah.
But
So
there's so many kind of nuances that make it kind of complicated too, and that make it difficult sometimes to calculate. Where say an unwind that happened over a month in, or either you backdated a payment. So that's where you have to kind of try to find find a way and stay consistent with it. Because as you start trying to backdate payments and stuff, it can all of a sudden throw a wrench into the
close the month and lock it up tight.
I can tell you based on past comments that if a certain CPA in Houston was your accountant and you were unwinding deals from a prior calendar period, you'd be at risk of assassination. I'm just telling you.
I just said she. Did I say she? Okay.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
So they tend to go over like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
Well, and Justin knows we've been through it kind of with their data. They're like, you can kind of chase your tail a little bit on this, and that's just frustrating. Like, that's not where dealers need to be. They need to be out there doing the other parts of their business. So this is why we've kind of started to take some of these things to social media in terms of, how can we help dealers be able to print a button, run a button when they close the month of April, on May 1st, walk in the door and run a report that they can trust and that can produce what it is we're talking about. Because, Jimmy, it's 2023 and we don't have that stuff for dealers. I'm like, what's going on? Why can't we make this easier? Because you've seen it. You work with a lot of different DMSs. And it's like, it's more challenging to get to those numbers with some. We see some software wash in the sales tax with principal, and some of them wash all their wholesale transactions inside the principal. It's like, come on, let's make this easier for dealers, and not to mention their consultant advisor over here is trying to run numbers.
Right. We have the same conversations internally about it.
Yeah. Good. Well, let us help. I mean, we're happy to just kind of lend the voice to the thing and try to bring people to the microphones and let's start talking about this and sorting it out. That's the biggest thing we're trying to do over here.
Well, then that's kind of one of the things we started was a dealer action committee forum. And we started with the first thing was being able to print off your.
Yeah, I need to send that to you, Jimmy, and Justin, you guys. I would love to have your feedback, because what we basically asked for in that report was that every DMS would create for us a report. And we're basically, the way we're going about that is we're asking dealers to verify that this would be a beneficial report for them. Then we're asking them, would you be willing to sign a petition? I don't love the word, but I don't have a better one. It's like, would you sign off saying that this is something you'd love to have? And then we're going to send that to NIADA and ask them to send it to the DMS providers and request this on our behalf so that report is just a reconciliation of all the principal in a calendar period.
Yeah.
Open the principal with this, added this new
Justin
principal.
understands, because this is something we've talked about.
Yeah. It's difficult. I mean, the thing about it is, some of these DMSs will allow you to do it. It's just very robust, and you almost have to know. We've even had to outsource and hire other people just to build the reports inside our DMS. Yeah. And so some of them are capable of doing it. It's just, how do you do it? And even Mike has been there where we, and you're also, you made a good point to the consistency. Some dealer does it a different way. Well, even though if they build out a certain report, well, that doesn't match that other dealer's way of doing business. So now they're having to tweak those types of things. So it's a little complicated, but what I've noticed is because of the robust platform, if you can kind of get in there, it's amazing on what will it do? It's just, how do you do it?
So what we're trying to do is it's a standard.
Press the button.
This is the thing, collateral recovery rate. This is,
So I think that's, and we can get there, Jimmy. We just keep moving forward and taking bites of it. I think, people who know me know I'm as patient as anybody that they know. However, I'm getting older and crankier, and I'm running out of patience for some of this stuff. I'm saying, let's fix this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm patient till I'm not.
You're what?
I'm patient till I'm not.
Till you're not.
Gotcha.
And as we get to know you even better, it's like, okay, where's that?
Yeah.
And I think review is out there too. And Jimmy, maybe you can chime in on this, but the way that Mike and I were discussing prior to coming on, to simplify it for everybody, is basically in terms of collateral recovery rate, it's the dollar amount that I collected into what I could have collected, right? I mean, it's basically your principal and your repo proceeds on your principal that you collected and the gross charge-off. So it's like what I collected into what I could have collected.
Yeah, it's for every dollar you originated, for every principal dollar you originated, how much did you get back?
Yeah. So that's kind of how we kind of, view it that way too. So
and you can see why that becomes interesting to somebody who's looking to buy a paper. Like they want to know, okay, this is what it's historically done, and this is, what we can expect to create in terms of interest earnings or, interest collections and so on. So it's why it's important. And it's like we always say to dealers, look, you may have no thoughts of exiting. You may have no thoughts of recapitalizing your business. We still think this is an important number for you to track in terms of just being consistent with the industry, having a performance metric that you can feel sure that if circumstances change and you were looking at liquidating some paper or securing a line of credit, then you'd have some history of knowing and hopefully improving that number as you go. Because I think, Jimmy, if I were to guess, you don't probably show up at a lot of dealerships when you're working with a new dealer who's, a year in business. They probably don't have this number that they print off and hand to you very often.
Right.
Right.
They do not.
You guys,
it's just such a good measure whether you're with a lender or not, just because it does kind of give you how the performance or the health of the portfolio, and it just lets you ask so many questions within or evaluate things within your own dealership about, hey, what's causing this? Because you either compare it to what you've done historically, you start tracking information, or either an industry benchmark, just to kind of see where we are, what could I be doing, what could I be doing different, what can I improve on?
Of course.
Why are we where we are?
What are those numbers, Jimmy? If just that sweet spot or that industry benchmark, what are you guys looking for typically?
It totally depends, because it all a little bit on the model. What we found is like even within kind of our own portfolio, the average is around 70, and we tend to see are mid-high 60s to mid 70s. But I mean, and occasionally you do see some above that, and frankly, you do see some below that. And when they start dropping below that 65, it starts getting into below 60. Then you start asking questions. Hey, are you having early defaults, or what? Know about the markup of the vehicle? How are your collection efforts?
So would you say then, because we talk to dealers all the time, discovery visits, whatever. It's like, what are the KPIs? And so, like, to say in the mid 70s or in the 70s, if you've got your collateral recovery rate in there, then you're doing okay. You're doing okay with that. If
you got the formula right.
If you got the formula right. That's a big thing.
Well, that's why I say, those two charts, it shows depending on what your formula is, that number is going to look a lot different. And neither one's wrong. They're both correct calculations. They're just measuring different things. And so I think we just got to be careful. And this is why, we want apples to apples. And so maybe we can find a date in June. We kind of got our May calendar planned out. We're talking collections throughout the month of May.
Hey, Jimmy, do you got anything with when you guys are lending that are kind of like, oh, collections? This is something I wish people knew.
I think just as a general concept is just treat that consumer like a person. You start from there.
Right on.
Which means having
that approach. That leads. That's a big like general like philosophy, not anything kind of.
That's a white hat way thing. Yeah. So, Mike, did you have some, or Justin?
I have a question. So I know to way to judge early defaults, and if you start seeing, the collateral recovery rate precipitously dropping, what about? I had a thing that always kind of like triggers in my head is some of these car prices, right? So I know a lot of dealers are trying to find larger grosses. So I know there's a lot of different variables, but to keep things constant and just assume that it's just kind of regular course of business, with dealers having to price their cars a little higher, have you found that even when you write that principal balance off, even though you're liquidating the metal, you would say, well, that would be worth more too, so it should bring more proceeds in, but do you find that being commensurable? Like, we all had to kind of raise our prices. And so now we're going to have higher gross charge-offs. Well, that car now technically should bring more money at the repo sale or assigned a higher fair market value. Are you finding it where it's just not quite commensurable and then therefore the collateral recovery rate has just kind of gone downward?
Well, right now, what kind of the challenge is where particularly those ones you originated third or fourth quarter last year when vehicle prices were at kind of the peak, and as they started to come down, that's increasing that severity there. Where you may have marked that gross up, but then that liquidation value has gone down. And
right, because we can look at it like it's early defaults. You could look at it, well, default's a default, but we could also look at it like we were all forced in this higher, pricing zone, and therefore we had to assign it a higher retail price, which therefore can cause a higher principal charge off. And so it's kind of like, and Jim, we can easily manipulate some of these things where you price the car lower, where now your charge-offs are lower, and things like that. But I was just kind of curious as it pertained to the collateral itself. Assuming everything kind of remains steady, where you have your regular default percentage and your early defaults are not at a huge spike, but because of the price the cars have led us into a certain range, how is that correlated to collateral recovery rate when you go to liquidate the metal? Because wholesale prices may have dropped, raised 40 or 50%, but sometimes when we go to sell it at the repo sale, it's still pretty damaged. It's still not bringing the best dollar, but your principal balance over here is still huge.
Yeah, and that's what negatively impacted that.
Okay.
It's a challenge for our industry all the way down.
Okay.
And we've got dealers out there. That dealer that I showed the charge from, we've got like 6 or 7 years worth of history with that particular dealer. So obviously we've got some numbers that are BC, like before COVID. So you've got all that, and so I think this is why, Justin, you would want to see that. Like if I'm a business, regardless of my liquidation strategy, exit strategy, whatever, it's like, if I can see and track, then I can better make decisions on all those things you're talking about, because other dealers would have similar tracks in terms of margins and price and terms and all these kind of things. But that's why I say I think the first thing is just to start tracking it, go back historically as far as you can go. But even before that, we all need that report from our DMS that'll tell us what all the principal movement was in our portfolio. So this is why, can I count on you and Mike to sign the petition? Can I get your okay right now? I got a thumbs up from you.
Even you, Jimmy.
No pressure.
I just want to see.
It's friendly pressure.
Yeah, I just want the dealers to be able to, print that report first thing on the close of the month and say, this is how much my principal was at the start of the month. This is how much principal we collected, and in active receivables, and you get the idea. It just reconciles. It just balances. We know where all the money moved in and out of that portfolio, which is the largest asset in most dealers' businesses. I just think I'm happy to ask nicely. I'm always a nice guy at the start, so it's like,
it's like, Jimmy, till I'm not.
So it's like I think it's just time to kind of try to solve some of this stuff for dealers. And so I look forward to that. And I just picked up 2 new signatures today. So we're making progress.
All right.
No, it's all good. We can let folks go.
Thank you so much for joining us, you guys. I really, really appreciate it. Jimmy, we appreciate your support and willingness to come on. Mike and Justin, thank you for your insight and your questions. And I think that when we bring experts on, I kind of like the idea of bringing a couple of dealers so that they can start asking questions as well.
I like this as well.
Yeah, it makes.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Jim and Michelle.
All right.
If you guys want a sequel to this in June, so we'll come back and talk about this.
Yeah, we will do that. Do you guys want to stick around for just a second, and then we will say a proper goodbye after we've closed everything up, if you have a minute? Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks. Okay. Well, that was good. That was we need to get those graphs changed a little bit, so it's cleaned up. But I think that we got a good start on helping people understand what that is, and helping me understand what that is. The new
and as we say with the white hat thing, this is not a white hat Wednesday, but this is how transparency looks. You just get out there and talk about it and figure it out together. So,
all right, guys, have a great rest of your weekend.
Yeah, enjoy the weekend.
And we'll see you all on Monday. Thanks so much.
Collections in May.